Let's take a journey back in time, shall we? Imagine it's around the year 1900 on the green hills of what we now call Kenya, long before the modern world really arrived. A complete, incredibly complex society was thriving there. And the only reason we have such a clear picture of it is thanks to a husband and wife team, the Routledges. They spent years just meticulously documenting the Agikuyu people. So what we're doing here is taking a walk through their research. It's like a snapshot of a culture caught at this one pivotal moment in history.
Right from the very beginning, the Routledges were really upfront about how ridiculously hard this was. This was not some simple culture with easy answers. I mean, this quote says it all, right? Every single time they thought they had it figured out, some new piece of information will come along and boom, their whole carefully constructed edifice, as they put it, would just tumble into ruins. This really sets the stage for us. It reminds us that we're looking at a historical attempt to capture a living, breathing, and often contradictory culture.
So, to really get a feel for this world, we're going to follow the life of a hypothetical Agikuyu person. We'll start right from the beginning, from the moment they're born into this landscape of green hillsides, bustling homesteads, and of course, some really deep-rooted traditions. Now, for our young Agikuyu, growing up wasn't just about, getting older. Nope. It was a series of profound community-wide ceremonies that would literally shape their identity and define their place in society for the rest of their lives. The very first step on this journey, it's simple, but it's huge. A father performs a ceremony with a sheep, and by placing these little wristlets on his child, they are officially recognized. In that one moment, the child isn't just a baby anymore. They truly become a member of the Agikuyu people.
Okay, so that was step one, but it was just the beginning. The biggest, most important milestone in any young person's life was still on the horizon, and that was the initiation ceremony, a massive festival for both boys and girls that marked their official entry into adulthood.
And when I say massive, I mean it. This was a multi-day journey. Let's walk through it. First up, the day before. It all starts with protection. The mother performs rituals to ward off any witchcraft. Then you get the great dance, where the whole community comes together for this huge celebration. Step 3 is the hut ceremony, this really pivotal moment where the initiate climbs up on the roof to hand out symbolic gifts. Then, at dawn, comes the rite itself, circumcision, done by a specialist. And then, and this part is amazing, look at step 5, recovery. The community was so invested in this that the new adults were given a 3-month holiday before they had to start their working lives. Just wow. What an incredible social commitment.
So, you're an adult now. What's next on the agenda? Well, building a homestead. And that, of course, meant marriage, a whole process of negotiation, ritual, and literally building a new home right from the ground up.
At the very heart of any marriage negotiation was the bride price. And the magic number you see here? 30. The customary price for a bride was 30 goats, plus some sheep. And this wasn't just some transaction. It was a profound statement about the value of the woman who was joining the family. I mean, it was so much wealth that it was often paid off in installments over years. The wedding ceremony itself was just packed with drama and ritual. The groom's family would actually stage a mock seizure of the bride, carrying her off to her new home. And her role in all of this? To perform a totally conventional 4 days of weeping. The Routledges actually noted that this sorrow was as ritualistic as, say, the tears of an early Victorian bride in England. It was a required performance that marked this huge, monumental shift in her life. Life in the new homestead was all about partnership, with these really clear, complementary roles. As you can see, the man's job was that heavy initial work, clearing the forest, defending the home, building the huts. But once that home was built, the woman held an incredible amount of power. She controlled all the future cultivation, which basically made her the owner of the family's food supply. And in a polygamous household, her autonomy was guaranteed. Every single wife was entitled to her own hut. Now, these family homesteads, they didn't exist in a vacuum, right? They were all part of this much larger social fabric, and it was governed by a pretty sophisticated legal system and a really deep connection to the unseen spiritual world. At the very center of their belief system was Ngai, the supreme being whose home was the majestic Mount Kenya. It was believed that all power, from the authority of the elders to the skills of the medicine men, it all flowed from Ngai. And this belief showed up in the physical world, too. Certain giant ficus trees were considered sacred. They were never, ever intentionally cut down, serving as these living links to the divine. Their government was actually brilliantly decentralized. You can see the 3 pillars right here. It all started with the head of the homestead, kind of the ruler of his own family. For bigger issues, you had the Kiyama. These were councils of elders who acted as judges. And to make sure their rulings were followed, you had the Jamaa, a body of young warriors who basically served as the keepers of the peace.
Now, this is what I find really fascinating. Look at the nuance here. Their legal system wasn't some single, rigid code that applied to everyone, everywhere. Justice was local. For the exact same crime, killing a man, the penalty, paid in livestock, was different depending on the district you were in. It shows this really flexible system of justice handled by local leaders based on their own regional customs.
So beyond their social structures, the Agikuyu were also just incredible artisans. They were masters at transforming earth and metal into objects that were both functional and, frankly, breathtakingly beautiful.
So much of their craft was built on the art of making iron. The Routledges described watching it as feeling like they were, quote, standing beside primitive man before the dawn of history. It was this laborious, all-day affair, smelting iron-bearing sand in a hearth with charcoal. And here's a cool detail. This skill was specialized. 2 of the 13 Agikuyu clans were actually forbidden from working with iron. And this skill with iron allowed for incredible precision. Just look at how they made these beautiful chains. First, the smith draws out the iron into a superfine wire. Then, they form a single link. Step 3, they interlock it with the one before it and hammer it shut. And then they just repeat that process, as you can see, link by painstaking link. The result was this prized ornament, all made completely by hand. It's just amazing.
Ironwork wasn't the only specialized craft, though. Pottery was exclusively the work of women. And not just any women, only those from a few specific families who happened to live near the right kind of sand deposits. They would shape, dry, and fire these pots at home before carrying them, often for long distances, to sell at the local markets. I mean, they were key players in the economy. The absolute culmination of all this craftsmanship was found in their weapons, and Routledge was clearly just in awe. He described a spear simply tapped into shape and polished with stone that was so perfectly balanced, so masterfully made, that just holding it, in his words, makes one feel bloodthirsty. That's a pretty powerful testament to the smith's art, wouldn't you say?
So when you pull it all together, from birth rituals to legal codes, from marriage customs to the fine art of chainmaking, what the Routledges documented was a complete and self-contained world. It was a society with its own logic, its own beauty, and its own way of ordering life. And it was all captured just as these powerful outside forces were beginning to arrive on the scene.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, a big question. The Routledges' work is basically a time capsule, right? It preserves this incredibly detailed picture of Agikuyu life from over a century ago. And it forces us to ask, what happens when a world like this, so rich in tradition and structure, collides with the unstoppable forces of colonization and modernity? That's the question their snapshot leaves us to ponder.